One time, Coach Attig had a rental car with 3 pole vaulters in it on St. George Island, Florida, driving down the road 40 miles an hour. And he notices about a 6 or 8 foot high white sand dune. And suddenly, without us knowing, he whips the car up into the sand dune. And we start grabbing things, and the car just about bogs down. He whips it back down to the pavement. Boom! And we went, what the heck? And who was laughing harder than anybody was our coach. A minute later, when he did it a second time, we were still freaked out. He went a little higher, a little faster, and at the last second before the car got stuck in the sand, he whipped it back down on the pavement. Boom! And we're like, man, coach! And he's laughing harder than anybody, the coach. The third time he did it, we got stuck and we had to dig it out of the sand. And nobody, Stephanie, you probably don't know this story, but nobody laughed harder than our coach. Another time, we're at a meet, and the pole vaulters went to his room to say, what are we doing tomorrow? When do we go to the meet? Coach Attig is sitting on the end of the bed, and he goes, hey, guys, watch this. And he does this backward rollover into a handstand, very dynamic. Boom! And his feet hit the ceiling. It was beautiful. But his feet blew the ceiling up about a foot. And totally devastated the hotel ceiling. Fortunately, one of the pole vaulters was a mechanical engineer and rigged a clothes hanger into a hook and pulled the ceiling down. And toothpaste was used as spackle. And guess who thought it was the funniest? The coach. Another time, this is the last story, we had the bright idea, we vaulted at Nationals, that there was an open window, and we thought, what if we were to run and jump out of the window over the bushes horizontally, and then the mulch, the landscape was about 5 feet down, roll, and then see how far we could do that. And we had to open the door out to the hallway to get a good approach. And as we're doing this, our coach sees it, and we're busted. And of course, we said, oh, hey. And he goes, that looks fun. Can I try that? And so, our coach launched himself through the window. That was our coach. So the reason I tell you these stories is most of you, if you sit and talk with Rick Attig, you'll think he'll talk physics of the pole vault, the biomechanics, the kinesiology. He can be very intimidating. He could still beat both of us up simultaneously. And many people think he's just this stoic, emotionless guy. But really, just so you know, when he gets up here and talks, he's really just the heart. Inside, he's really just a 21-year-old pole vaulter at heart. So
He's just a big pole vaulter. How about some stats? So in order to get these stats for tonight, I did a little research, and I got to call the sports information departments at University of Kansas, University of Nebraska, and then I got to call some of his old vaulters from high school, and I got some good information. How about some stats, though? Coach Attig coached in high school when he first got out of college. He had a master's degree, and 15-footers. How about 11 15-footers? And this is from a little high school in Missouri near Kansas City. How about 16-footers, how about 6 of those? And then how about 2 17-footers? And this is in the early 80s, Coach Attig did these things. I mean, those are amazing numbers. His team, or his athletes in Missouri said when he showed up, Coach Attig was a tremendous athlete. He was a javelin thrower, a football player. He had a chance to play pro football, coached instead. And they'd get out on the field and say, Coach, throw the football. Because they said he would throw it 80 yards. And this was so he wasn't kidding. He said he could beat us up still. So Coach Attig obviously got noticed. He had national articles about this amazing pole vault program. He a couple times had several of the top 3 pole vaulters in the country from this little high school. And then, he's not recruiting. He's getting who walks in the door. It's amazing. University of Kansas picks him up. And how about some numbers for University of Kansas? 17-footers. Well, this is Kansas, and then later Nebraska. So his university numbers, 17-footers. He had 24 17-footers. And when you go 5 meters and up, it's more than you can put on paper here. 18-footers. How about 10 18-footers? And this was over a 21-year career. And then towards the end of his career, women's pole vaulting came in. And that, in the short time he had women's pole vaulters, he had 10 13-foot women's pole vaulters. And he had both men's and women's vaulters at the Olympic trials from his college teams. So he was coaching them at a very high level. Coach Attig was also a tremendous coach across the board at track and field. He had 49 All-Americans, for his time in college. He had 47 conference champions. That's Big 8 and Big 12. Tremendous jumping. He had 2 separate times competing for the highest vault trio in history for men's pole vaulters. One group at 18.5 per man was the average of the top 3 vaulters. He went on after he had pro vaulters too, and he had his first pro vaulter on the U.S. top 10 list in 1986, last one in 2003 so far. All through the 1990s, he had somebody on the top 10 list. For 4 of those, he had the top 4 for 9 of those 10 years, or someone in the top 4 for 9 to 10 years. He had the number 1 U.S. vaulter for 4 of the 10 years through the 90s. That's on the U.S. team list. Of course, he had Scott set the American record and make an Olympic team. And as cool as all those numbers are, his work in USA pole vault development is maybe why we're standing here today, because Coach Attig was the first USA pole vault development chair. He started making phone calls, and he got the U.S. pole vault coaching contingent together for some of the first pole vault get-togethers and said, let's get our language together, let's get a book. So we had the USA pole vault development manual. We got all that going. He was a national team or Olympic festival coach, and produced a bunch of pole vault videos, tons of articles, and there's many people in this room, I'm sure, that would nod their head and say, I read Rick Attig stuff in the years of coaching. So just tremendous numbers for Coach Attig.
He's the reason we vaulted at Kansas. He's the reason we stayed there and vaulted professionally. He introduced us to sports nutrition, sports massage, sports psychology. This is back in the 80s. He taught us the concept of plyometrics. He taught us how to train. And so we're just really happy that he's being recognized as one of the great pole vault coaches of all time. And so on behalf of the Raytown South High School guys, the Nebraska guys, and the University of Kansas, we're happy to induct Rick Attig into the Hall of Fame.
Wow, what an honor. I forgot about a lot of that stuff. Kind of like a Seinfeld episode about the rental car, though, isn't it? Remember that? Any Seinfeld people here? Anyway, I tell you, what a humbling honor to be here tonight and being honored in this manner. And I want to thank Debbie and Steve and Bob Fraley and everybody that has everything to do with this banquet tonight. I really appreciate it. And what a great way to cut your teeth on college coaching and have a couple guys like this. So it makes it pretty hard to fail. And it's kind of one of those things where you think of some of the different things that I have to go back here. I was asked to speak at the Michigan clinic in February, and they told me I could speak on, they wanted me to have about 6 or 7 different topics on the pole vault, which I find pretty easy to do because I usually speak at a clinic and never really feel like I even touch the surface on things I would like for coaches to know and be able to express. And so when I started thinking about all the different things that's happened in my career, and especially things that were kind of humorous. The one experience I remember was at the 87 World Indoor Championships, I believe it was, in Indianapolis. They also had sort of a meet that prepared for kind of a tune-up meet for the NCAAs, and these 2 guys were jumping, and we had some jumpers there too, and because I coached the jumping events, I didn't just coach the pole vault only. And so we got the room at the last minute, and there really were no rooms, and we had, I don't know how many guys we had in the room, but it was like maybe 8 people or so in one room. It was at the Embassy Suites. How many stories was that? 20 something? I don't know. It was really high. But it was kind of a cylinder. And we were up on pretty close to the top floor. I slept between 4 chairs. At the dining table we had in there, everybody had beds or couch, and I had 4 chairs that I kind of pulled out and made it into a bed, and that's what I was going to sleep on. And anyway, we're wired that they just finished jumping. They watched the World Indoor Championships, and we actually finished about 11:30, or maybe it was 12. So we got back in kind of late. But these guys are still kind of wired. I'm wanting them to go to sleep, and they're walking around, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? I can't let them walk around. So I'm laying there trying to sleep, and Scott and Pat, they weren't in the room, and I'm thinking, oh gosh. And of course, these guys are kind of guys you trusted. You really didn't worry about them. But, at least I had to go see what was going on. So I step out, and I see Scott or Pat, I forget which, they have these airplanes. I think Pat bought, he's the mechanical engineer, he bought some airplanes, gliders, and he's launching them off the railing there, and it's just floating down the embassy suites down towards the lobby. Oh man, we're going to get in trouble. I'm going to hear about this, and I look down, and there's two security policemen with their watches timing the gliders as they're coming down to see how long they would just stay in flight. And but these are the kind of guys that would do stuff like that. Were convinced the security guards that was a good idea. And so it was a blast to work with these guys, and it's kind of one of those things. I feel like I just have had a very blessed career. When I started at Cape Central High School at the first, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and I coached there for 2 years, and it was kind of one of those things I thought, boy, I'd really like to get up in the Kansas City area because they're more competitive. And I coached all the jumps, long, triple jump, high jump, pole vault, and I thought, boy, it'd be great to get up there because down where we were at, jumping 14 feet, that was great. But up in Kansas City, it was a little bit tougher. So, and that was the day before I went to the state meet with a few guys. And the very next thing, I was talking to a coach at Raytown South High School, and he said, you know what? He said, and our team ended up taking third place for the first time ever, the team that I was with. We had lots of jumps there and the vaulters, but he said, if we could get your field event team together with our running event team, boy, we'd have a good track team. I said, yeah, that would be great. He said, you're looking for a job? And I said, well, yeah. So I went up, got the job, and I was there at Raytown South for 7 years, and guys were, just a great group of kids to work with, very motivated, kind of hard to fail, but, it was a lot of work. But anyway, it was kind of the same thing. And I remember watching, you guys remember the movie Running Brave? Garrett and I, my son, we go watch Running Brave, and it's about, Billy Nels, the American Indian, Native American runner that ran at University of Kansas. And a lot of it was kind of a Kansas history. And as we're walking out of there, I said, Garrett, what would you think if your dad coached at University of Kansas, which was 30 miles away from us? He said, that'd be pretty cool, Dad. And we walk on, and it was probably a month later, I get a phone call from Bob Timmons to ask me to go to the University of Kansas. And so it's funny how these things work. And obviously, at one point, while I was at KU, which I loved, I was kind of looking at going to to another university, and after our kids were kind of out of college, and it's kind of one of those same things, where I was looking at the possibility of going somewhere out west, and I just, and I told Stephanie the night before if I had my choice of schools I would go to, I kind of have a list of about 2 or 3, and I told her what that list was, and the very next day, the number 1 on the list, the athletic director at University of Nebraska calls up, said, you know what, says, here you're kind of looking around for a job, and says, I think we may have a job for you. So that's sort of how my career's kind of happened. It's just kind of when you think about what you would really like to do, things just kind of fall in place. But like I said, I've enjoyed a great career, and I'm not done. I'm coaching I'm the head track coach at Blue Valley North High School in Overland Park, Kansas, where I've had some really great pole vault coaches. I on and off, I've worked with the vaulters there for probably 5 of the 10 years I've been there. But I've had one of my vaulters, that All-Americans that I had at University of Nebraska, coached them for a while. Now I have another great guy. He and I kind of share the vault and all 4 jumps together. So still working with it. And Doug Lytle just asked me to kind of take over his training facility in Kansas City for vaulters in the off season, and that's what I'm doing. So it's great to kind of have some really motivated kids again, because it's not always easy to work at one school and really have a lot of motivated kids. So you have these kids who are wanting to come to a club to train in the winter. That's a blast. So I've been enjoying that a lot. But anyway, again, I appreciate it, and I look forward to coming back and seeing some of the future inductees. And anyway, enjoy the summit. Thank you.